My class is Marius the Caesar, conquering Gaul. During the last half of the first century, Rome had a problem. She'd been involved in a number of wars. Her army, there's a map of Gaul as Caesar. Her army was based on a class system. Each property-owning citizen came forward and provided their own equipment. So they were armed based on what they could afford, whether it was a small shield and spears, or heavy armor and a sword and a heavy spear, or a light shield and a light breastplate and a sword and a light pilum. And they were arrayed according to this, and this is how their armies were set. But the other thing is their armies were, being citizens, they were called up at the beginning of the campaign season. They went out, they fought during the campaign season. At the end of the campaign season, they came home because it was harvest time, and they had to come home and harvest the fields and return to their businesses. But Rome had a problem. They were expanding. They had just defeated Carthage. They had just beat up on the Greeks again. They were engaged in a war with the Parthians over in Syria. They had conquered Egypt, where they were starting to get their grain supply from, and they needed long-term garrisons to man these places. And their citizen soldiers were saying, "You want me to do what? For how long?" No. I sign up, I go fight the war, I come home at the end of the season, that's what my contract says. Well, Marius came along, Gaius Marius, and said, when all this came up, and said, "Look, this isn't working. Our citizens are saying they don't want to do this. They're providing all their own equipment. They're volunteering to fight our wars. But this ain't working. We got to figure out something else to do. But I got an idea that might work. Why don't we go out and gather up the poor and pay them to go fight our wars? We'll equip them. We'll arm them. We'll supply them. We'll sign them up for, let's say, 20 years. And we'll keep them out. They can stay out on station, in our various garrisons. They can fight our wars for us. And that way our citizens don't have, our higher income citizens don't have to go and fight our wars for us. Well, everybody thought, hey, this is a great idea. Well, Marius came up with some other ideas. One of them was, whenever our armies went out to fight, they were all encumbered with these, real slow oxen carts that only traveled about a mile an hour, which is really, really slow and hindrance. So he said, forget that. We'll take everything off the ox carts and make the soldiers carry it. We can give them some mule carts, which travel as fast as the soldiers, but now the soldiers can cover about 20 miles in a day, which is pretty fast for an army. And that's what they did, and that's where the term Marius's mules came from. So here we see one of Marius's mules with the equipment that the state provides him, with his chainmail and his spear and his sword and his cloak and all of his other encumbrances that the state gave him to go out and fight a war with. Well, one of the problems that developed was these armies suddenly became, instead of loyal to the Republic, they became loyal to their generals. Men like Julius Caesar and Pompey and Crassus, which wasn't good. And we'll talk about that in my class. But most of all, we'll talk about this man, Julius Caesar, and the changes that he put on his army as he started to go out and make his campaigns in Gaul. where he recruited his men from, the campaigns, what started his campaign in Gaul, his consulship, the politics that led him to his consulship and his proconsulship in Transalpine Gaul. We're going to talk about his campaigns, but not only that, we're going to talk about his campaigns from the point of view of his infantrymen, his legionaries. The guys who had to wear these hats and march in these shoes, the original combat boots.
Dressed up like that?
Who knows? You never know.
Are you going to put that on?
Am I going to put that on? I could. But I will bring to class museum quality artifacts like this that you will be able to handle and look at and examine close up. These are the type of things that you can expect in my class because, these are what these soldiers worked with and fought with. They'll have tools that they used, articles that they wrote home with. We'll talk about things that they complained about. They did complain to their general. They actually refused to go fight a battle and sat down and told Caesar, we're not going to fight. And we'll talk about why, what caused them not to want to go to war or go fight a battle and what Caesar had to do to make them happy. We'll talk about some of his victories. We'll talk about Vercingetorix and the Battle of Alesia. And we'll talk about why these men, these centurions, were the most feared men in the Roman army. So lace up your Caligulae and come and march through Gaul with our class.